currently what I've been using as a pencil cup. This is something I made years ago when I was in college, and I had a little bit of time on a lathe. This was a fun project because it was made out of scrap, so it didn't cost anything. It was just leftover chunk at the end of a piece of stock, and it was a lot of mindless work to just hog out a solid chunk of aluminum down to this, polished out the outside, and I've always had it. So I started using it as a cup in the garage because it's a nice memento of college. Knocked a hole in it, hung on the pegboard wall, and it works great as long as you only have one or two things in it. When you start adding a lot of weight, especially something like this, it gets a little top heavy. So these are the things I always used to keep in the little pencil cup. But then I started to get more stuff. Different colors of Sharpies, wide tip Sharpie for larger things. Silver Sharpies work great on metal. They also work great on dark woods like walnut. China markers are wonderful for glass or plexiglass, things like that, where you don't want to scratch it up, but these make a nice dark shape to it. And then I always keep quite a bit of mechanical pencils around. These just get scattered throughout the shop all the time. So what I wanted to do today was go through the thought process of how we design something. This cup works great. Doesn't necessarily need to be this tall, but I need a lot more space. So I like to understand what the requirements of my project are. Do I keep everything separate? Do I put everything together? Do I make individual holes? On this project, I have a lot of different types of marking. Different types of Sharpies, different type of pencils, different type of China markers, and I want to be able to quickly grab what I need. I want them to stay organized, and I want to be able to just pick up what I need when I want it. Another stretch goal is to be able to take that with me. With a lot of the other organization that I've done, we can usually just pick up what it is and move it off to a location if I need to work. So that's kind of what I've been thinking here. Some other requirements, I want this to be cheap. I don't want to spend a lot of money for it, so chances are it's going to be made out of scrap wood. I'm getting lazy, and I like to use my CNC for things, most because I don't like cleaning up all the sawdust right now. My shop is a garage shop. I've got my cars in it. If I've just washed the cars, I really don't want to put a lot of sawdust in the air. But my CNC has dust collection built in, so it makes a lot less mess than jointer, table saw, drill press, any number of other things. By laying everything out, I can get an idea for the size and shape of what I want to do. And just looking at this, I think I can get by with something around this big. I also think I can get by with 4 or 5 pockets. Another thing to think about is I want it to hang on my pegboard. So I'll probably take advantage of those peg spacing. Standard pegboard spacing is 1 inch on center. So knowing that, I can take one of my hangers, I can get the angle off of it, and I can use this as my mounting point. These are commonly available. You can buy them in bulk. There's a lot of different styles, so measure yours to make sure it fits if you decide to do something like this. But by understanding where that spacing goes, I can end up putting these at various locations. I can leave material in my design so that I can make mounting features that match this or any other hook. So I designed this in Fusion 360, and it's an extremely simple rectangular with rounded corners design. I made the outside corners just a little bit larger radius, and then set this up to extrude in 2 pieces. The extrusion was very simple, made it the width of the boards I was using. The cam setup that we did was very simple. First thing we did was an adaptive clear to hog out most of the interior space, finished it up by a cleanup pass on the inside surfaces, and then did a perimeter clear to cut it out, left a little bit with tabs so we could cut it apart and make it work. And then we simply jumped over and started gluing up the pieces. Rather than having 2 separate pieces to affix to my wasteboard, I decided to go ahead and glue these together to make it easier. It's a lot simpler to have one large piece, and it was worth the 30-minute glue up time. A little bit of clamps, a little bit of glue, a little bit of wax paper to make sure that it didn't stick to my workbench, and we are good to go. After the glue up, I had to do a little cleanup on the glue joint. Didn't like the way it landed, and I wanted to make sure this sat flat on my wasteboard for the CNC. Clamped it down on the workbench and used a hand plate to just clean up the surfaces and make sure it would lay flat. So even though we have a rather large garage, space is always at a premium. We decided to build our CNC into a workbench. My solution to make it to where I would have a usable work surface above it was to simply add a lift to the top of the workbench so I could move it up. After we had the bottom flat, it was a simple matter of pin nailing it down to the wasteboard. This is one of the easier CNC programs to run. Soft pine, easy feed rates, not very complex. Sometimes it's fun to just let it work, and this is one of those times. It had no issues when we ran, and we got a great product from it. A little bit of light sanding to clean up some of the fuzzy bits from the machining process. Easy to get rid of those small tabs that we left to help hold the parts together, and then we're ready for glue up. This is not a critical part. These are not things that have to slide together. It just has to look kind of good. So we put a little bit of glue on all the surfaces, used a few clamps to keep it together, and it looked pretty darn good. We were really happy with the way this turned out. The glue up was quick, easy, and just required a little bit of cleanup on the inside to get rid of what squeeze out happened on the internal surfaces. The outside of the piece was really easy to clean up. Marking the middle of one of the ribs, we drilled a couple holes in the side of the piece. This was wonderful because we left that extra material for the pegboard hook to slide into, and it worked flawlessly. The one issue we had was the alternating layers of the piece were hard and soft, so it really wanted to push that drill bit around. Using a simple piece of pine as a drill guide, we were able to hold the piece in place and start the hole. Once the hole was started, it was really easy to just drill all the way through to depth and get where we needed to go for the hook. After those two holes were drilled, it was really simple to make sure everything fit well. Just checked the pegboard hooks to make sure they fit flush against the piece. One of them had a really nice sharp edge, but that didn't work because there was a radius on the hook. Small chisel, went to work and just clearanced it a little bit. And with very little effort, it fit exceptionally well. Here's our first test fit of the piece. The pegboard hooks lined up right where they're supposed to be. It fit at the bottom of the board really nicely. And then it was just a simple matter of adding some pens, pencils, marking gauges, and all that fun stuff to it to make sure it worked well. We're pretty happy with the way this turned out. It's convenient, it's easy. We put it lower to the ground so my wife has a little bit easier time reaching it. She's only 5'2", so when it's up high and it's above the joiner, she struggled a little bit. Our kids can probably reach this as well. They are 4 and 7, so having something up high on the board makes it really hard for them to reach it, which can be a good thing if it's a sharp thing like a saw or a chisel. So we start off with this, and I'm going to keep it because I love this cup. Don't know what to use it for, but I got a drawer it'll fit in really well. We ended up with this. I've got 5 spots for pencils. Got my 2 locations for mounting. They are drilled 7 inches on center, and as you've noticed, I've left plenty of material there that when I drilled into this, there was no room for that to blow out to the side, as long as I was careful. So using 2 standard hooks, we can mount this to the wall, take it on and off very easily. So do I like this? Yeah, it works good. Is it perfect? No. There's a few things I'd change about it. Number one, I don't think I'd make it quite as wide, or I'd put another segregation between it or another divider in here. What happens is it's short enough, it holds the pencils fine, but they tend to flop around a little more than I like. And that's really the biggest thing I don't like about it. If it was something more onerous, I'd probably remake this. But it works just fine, and I'm happy with it. And it makes my life just that much easier. So we're gonna go ahead, fill it up, get it ready to use, and move on. Every little transformation helps. My world gets a little bit easier to use. I get a little more satisfaction in every one of these projects I finish. So join us next time. Make sure to click the like button, subscribe, follow us, ring that bell, whatever you want to do. We'd love to see you come back as we transform our kingdom one project at a time.